Hello, everyone. Shannon Gardner here. Today I'm joined with Jasmine and Marle again for another chat today. So, today our chat is going to be about free will and what it means to live in a free will universe. So this is such a large topic to talk about, a very big philosophical topic, and we won't be able to cover everything on this chat today because it is such a large topic. We'd be here for days chatting. So we're just going to cover a few of the topics today. And so I just got a definition out of the Oxford Dictionary to tell you guys the definition of free will. So, the Oxford definition of free will says the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. Now, I also pulled a second definition out of the Britannica Encyclopedia, and it was slightly different to the Oxford definition. It said that free will in philosophy and science is the supposed power or capacity of humans to make decisions or perform actions independently of any prior event or state of the universe. So I found that a little bit interesting that the Britannica put supposedly in there. I'm not sure if you guys are aware or not, but there are, I think, 15 editions of the Britannica encyclopedias. And from editions 1 to 10, had a lot of information in those encyclopedias. And from the 11th edition onwards, they had removed some information. So I'll leave that up to you guys to have a think about what I mean when I say that. And so the word is that the editions 10 and under are the go for those encyclopedias. So I just found that was a little bit interesting that they use the word supposedly in there. So there's a lot of debate around the topic of free will and being in a free will universe. And so I'm going to have Jasmine and Marle introduce themselves, and they're going to tell us what they think about free will, what free will is, and what it means to live in a free will universe. So we're going to start with Marle first. Hi, Marle.
Hello. So good being back with you
It is.
girls. Always enjoy chatting with you.
Me too.
Yeah, so free will. Now, I was thinking about free will and looking at the SCHH, that's basically what we do, right? And to think of it in that perspective. So if we think of our souls being eternal and forever seeking learning opportunities to grow, then I would guess the free will would involve the stage of planning our lifetimes coming back. So when we go in there and we meet with the powers around of us, if that were our guides or those that look after us, and to be planning our lives. So you, I guess, then have the free will to decide how your life will pan out. So you've created opportunities for learning, and you have those around you which you have soul contracts in with to supply you with such opportunities and to support you through this. So in that sense, that's a massive free will within this path of your life. And then also while you're doing this throughout your life, so some people would then say, but if you've got this all planned out, how much free will is then left in that? So if you look at getting from point A to point B, learning through that, I guess the road that we take going through that process and how we react, how we plan, how we manage, how we grow and heal or avoid such lesson would then be the free will in it, shouldn't it? And so another way which I view free will is your ability to say no. So if you don't then like, for example, SCHH, and you don't like to be harassed by, energies, entities, then you'd be able to say no. And when you get them removed, to say, you don't have permission to be here, please leave, So that's another free will. And that's a big one for everybody, really. And also, while you're on this path, pre-planning your life, going through the life lessons, then at that stage, you can then decide whether you're going to learn and grow, do the healing, do the inner work, or you're going to try and avoid it and still be stuck in that whole thing. So, yeah, that's my little 2 cents and soapbox. What do you think, Jasmine?
Hi, so I'm Jasmine, and I'm an SCHH practitioner in New Zealand. And I totally agree with what you were saying, Marle, because that's so similar to my rationale. I was thinking about free will and how I've learned so much more about it in the last couple of years. It's been like we've been on this really steep learning curve of just about so much around all those concepts. And I think if you've been on a spiritual journey and looked into that, oops, I just saw someone in there behind you. That distracted me a little bit. So I had a similar thing, and that was that when I learned about hypnotherapy many years ago, and it was what's his name, Michael Newton, Life Between Lives.
Oh, yeah.
It really
Oh,
taught me.
yeah.
Have you read any of his books?
I've seen some of his videos, like I've seen interviews and
Yeah.
things with him.
Well,
Yeah.
it made a huge impact on me because I saw someone reviewing their lives and having to think about, well, what am I going to do in my next life? And it really made me aware of that in this life I wanted to do my lessons, so I didn't have to come back, or relearn them. Not that we're necessarily not going to come back. We don't
Yeah.
really know, do we, at the end of the day? But yeah, I feel that living in a free will universe is totally giving us responsibility for all our actions. And yeah, and back to that concept about what I was just saying was, like, I think we're like a diamond, and we choose in each life to polish one particular side of that multifaceted diamond, and it is up to us to make those choices throughout our journey. And another thing that had come to my mind was about consequences, because as a parent, like, my children are older than yours, like one's 32 and one's 24. I ended up going to having, because I was quite a soft parent, I had to go to tough love to really learn about consequences and about what was my stuff and what was my child's stuff. And it really helped me learn that, okay, we have to give them their will, that's their choice to behave in that way, and they will get the consequence. And I think that being a parent's a huge lesson in being overbearing or giving them free will and all of that. And I totally digressed from what we were supposed to be talking about.
No, it's good. I agree with you, Jasmine, with the whole parenting thing. I agree that it's such a big lesson, and having that authority over someone else. And that gets me into, like, the first topic of laws and society and how we're governed, and in our society, you have rules at school. There's rules all around us. The council has rules of what you can do, where you can park, everything we're doing. Even people need to have a fishing license to be able to catch their own food to feed themselves. And so I think society has gone like way too far in one direction. And, how do we manage this topic of free will on our planet, and how our society is it gone too far? Is it not enough? And you got laws and people in prison, and punishment for are some laws too harsh or some not harsh enough? There's so much that you can talk about in how it relates to society and that interference of people's free will. How far do you go, and how far do we allow each rule to take place in society? How it affects our free will here as sovereign beings on this planet, and being able to choose what we do. And I guess that ties in with what Marle said about choosing our path before we come here. There must be a purpose for everything and the rules and the way life is, because we choose our path before we come here. So yeah, I think it ties in nicely. Yeah. So that also brings us to the topic of there's, bodily autonomy and all kinds of different things you can get into. Yeah.
So I was just going to add a little bit there to Jasmine, with the children, and sometimes one of the hardest lessons for us really is to distinguish our, shall we say, opinions and our ideas from others people. And that was definitely, still is, one of my hardest things, to surrender or to let other people make their own decisions, even if I feel like it is definitely not the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But it's their free will, isn't it? It's their journey. And especially linking that into bodily autonomy, and in this specific time we live in at the moment, watching people make medical decisions and giving consent for having certain medications administered, and watching that whole process, because it doesn't matter how much we try and talk to them, warn them, some people just definitely, they're not ready to hear that. So with our free will, and I guess it also depends on how much our free will, and I think we can have as much free will as we like, as long as we do not affect others negatively, and letting people be sovereign without hurting them, I guess.
I agree. I think it's that part of not hurting other people and not interfering with other people's free will is the big importance, for sure. Jasmine.
But getting back to the children thing, it's like, me going to the tough love, for example, it wasn't about them, it was about me, about my boundaries and about the lessons and the trauma that I had. So I think it's so important to work on your own and reflect on why you do certain things, or do all the clearing that you can. Because once I learnt those sort of things and saw what other people were putting into practice, it just made it so much easier, and it sort of gave me that definition between what's my stuff and what's not my stuff, or how children learn. And by the same token, once your child turns 18, there's that debate, are they capable of making their own decisions? And I feel that because we've all come in here of our own, I was going to say free will,
Good.
Who's to say that we know better, that their path isn't something that they've determined and they're going through a certain experience? And
exactly.
We're not necessarily more evolved than our child just because we're older. They might have had thousands more lives, and that was a big thing for me to learn too, and just to realize that, okay, it's their responsibility. It actually makes you feel empowered when you're not having to merge all your energy with other people. And I guess that, it would affect all people in different ways with different family members or friends or anything, wouldn't it? It's everywhere, this whole free will subject.
Absolutely. Everything you're saying is, spot on. I agree. Yeah. with my kids, I have a wild child, Caden, and he's so wild. And in my head, I'm thinking, I need to get this kid to be responsible before he's 18 so that, when he does start making his decisions on his own as an adult, that I hopefully have taught him enough to be a responsible human being enough. You know what I mean? There's that pressure as a parent to, want to have your kids looked after and responsible and have them look after yourselves. But you're right, at the end of the day, they've chosen their own path as well. And I feel like my kids are more advanced than I am. They, with technology and other things, I can't get over. Like, they teach me stuff, so they're their own beings. And just because they're younger than us and our children, they've also had all these, their spiritual journey and their past lives, if they had any or whatever, and their own souls and their own journey to do that. Recently, my children have been outside playing with some of the neighbor kids, and there's hasn't been some great situations with that. And, I actually I'm seeing it as a positive experience for my children, because they're learning how to deal with all this negativity and this like different social problems with these other children. And so, as parents, I want to step in and go, deal, deal with these children. But my kids don't want me stepping in. They're like, no, mom, let us handle it. And so it's a learning experience for me, because I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. You need to handle it. You're not in danger.
Yes,
Not
yes,
dying.
that's a biggie.
Like this. Yeah, I can give them advice on how to handle the situation. And so it seems lately every night's been turning into like them asking me for advice. I tell them, and they're learning all these social situations with, with these neighbor kids in our neighborhood at the minute. So
That's awesome. What
yeah,
a great opportunity for you to teach and learn yourself with
it
them
has
in a way.
it's allowed me to, like you said, Jasmine, give them their free will and their freedom to figure out how to deal with these social situations, and for me to take a step back and, yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other day, driving my kids to school, as you do, and I'm thinking how we are basically raising our children in an environment, wanting them to be like us, to react like us, to do exactly the same as what we've done, expecting them to behave a certain way. And I was thinking how we shouldn't really be doing that, because they're the next generation. They're the ones that can move us forward. And we shouldn't really be limiting them and their growing up and the ways they think and the way they can create us a better future, isn't it? So in that sense, we need to be a bit more hands off so that we can hopefully allow them to blossom into whatever they need to be.
Yeah.
And that goes into the whole programming thing. We've been so conditioned and programmed and told how to bring your children up, what this means, what that means. And, how do we change that? Because they're a different generation. They're more activated or more crystalline, and plus the whole social media thing. I mean, that they're more used to technology, should I say. So,
Yeah.
it's really an interesting subject, isn't it?
It is, because they see things at schools, and then the schools are also governed. What they're teaching in school is all, governed of what they teach there as well by the government and whatnot. And so then they have all those different influences by social media, school, and I guess that's where discernment comes in, and we can just guide them and try and teach them discernment for themselves and how they can go about life and that sort of thing. About these big corporations who I think when you have these big corporations who are monopolizing, and you have the government who is influencing people, the schooling of the children and what they teach them, and that's influencing them. It's the same thing goes with the monopolization of big corporations and their influence that they have on people's free will as well, and what's going on in society and stuff like that. And that's how, the whole thing that's happened since 2020. You have the media, and then you have big corporations that have monopolized certain industries, and that is affecting people's free will in a big way as well, even with the thingy, the influence that these social media companies and these big corporations have on the information that gets out there to younger people or just to people in general. And I think those are the type of businesses that I would not be promoting, because they are monopolizing and having this negative effect on people's free will and our sovereignty, and I think there's this real slippery slope when you get into people's bodily autonomy. Recently in BC, Canada, there was this mother. I'm not going to say the name, but I'm going to put the link below if anyone wants to watch her YouTube story. They put out an Amber Alert in British Columbia for this child who they said this little boy was kidnapped. So there's this Amber Alert, and this goes all over social media. People are making TikTok videos about it and all this. And as it turns out, then the mother has gone on and made a statement on her YouTube channel to tell the truth of what's actually happened. And so basically, her mother was looking after her son and took her little boy to the hospital because he had a fever. And at the hospital, the doctors wanted to do a certain treatment on the child. And the mother said, the mother then came to the hospital and said, I want to think about it. So the treatment, she says, that they wanted to give this child because he was having a fever, basically, was they wanted to give him a lumbar puncture spinal tap to remove fluids from his spine, to see the health of the child's brain cells, and then administer 10 days of IV drip into his system. Okay. And so they had also given her another option, but basically they were trying to force these medical treatments onto this child. And the mother said, I need to go home, something around the lines of needing to go home and think about it. Well, when she came back to the hospital, she said, something around the lines of she had mentioned that her son was feeling better, starting to feel better, and she didn't think that he needed that. And so basically, her little boy got taken away from her. They were on the hunt for this lady, for her little boy, and the system took her little boy away because she did not want to follow through with the doctor's advice at the hospital. And yeah, it was just so sad to hear about this. I mean, the little boy is back now with the parents, thank God. But I've heard other stories in Canada as well about children being taken away out of custody for medical treatments that one parent or people didn't want to do certain cancer treatments or whatever. And it's just awful. In my opinion, that is really awful. And where have we agreed, like being born to this planet, to agree to having a government who is in charge of our our bodily autonomy? And that just takes the whole free will thing to a whole nother level of no, of no.
Totally agree.
And
yeah.
With the whole thing that's happened since 2020, there shouldn't be a debate about it. Like, it's your free will. If you want to do something to your body, if you want to poison your body and do this, that, whatever, that's your choice. Go for it. But that is really scary when we're getting into this this part where a mother doesn't want a spinal tap for her child just because he has a fever, and there's no, let's wait and see if this child gets better before doing something so invasive. Like, to me, that's really invasive. And you don't know the long-term implications of it, of doing something like that. And it's just, yeah. So anyway, I'll pass it on to you guys if you have any comment about that, about the whole bodily.
I'll just say that's where I feel that we're totally overregulated, you know, and it's unreal. People don't know how to navigate it. I was just going to say, where's the parents' right as
Exactly.
you know, they birth the child, they care for them. That's, yeah. But, you know, I know something like that happened in New Zealand at least 10, maybe 20 years ago. So it's not a new thing. It's been building. But yeah, I don't agree with it at all. Yeah. What about you, Marle? Because of your background, you might have something interesting to.
Yeah, it's I was just, the first thoughts I had was how everybody can stand back and watch somebody basically poison themselves, drink themselves to death, like take drugs and all these things. But, you know, why don't they take them away and lock them up and force them to like detox? You know what I mean? So to go the other way like that, you know, I think if it's a life and death situation, yeah, we need to all come together and really make an informed decision and really balance things up. But just, I obviously don't know the whole story about that child and everything, and I can't really comment about that. But obviously, he's all right without having his spinal tap. So I guess the mother most probably made the right decision. But I don't think it's up to the medical field to be, or I didn't think that, you know, they should or could do that. So I definitely, as a mother, would not want to do any medical procedures on my kids unnecessary. It's craziness.
Yeah, there's a whole war on natural health and that as well that ties in. There's you know, that whole topic as well. But exactly.
But you see, where I work, we work in gastroenterology, right? So we get a lot of people that come in with abdominal pain, various things that they don't know what's happening, and they get investigated, right? So we do the procedures, and most of the time people come out the other end where they can't tell you, listen, you've got cancer or anything like that, right? So a lot of times you come out the other end with no answers. So in that sense, to change your diet, look at health factors, and then I have told people, go and see your naturopath, go and, you know, find other ways. There's not one way for all. So you need to explore and you need to find something that's good for you and that works for you and your body. I think a lot of people want to take pharmaceuticals, which I'm not a great fan of, even working in the medical industry. All pharmaceuticals have side effects. And so in that sense, using our free will, getting back to the topic, to choose your own way in treating yourself and your body. And I'm a strong believer also in doing the inner work, you know, looking at where is this coming from? Am I too anxious? Am I too stressed? Am I too depressed? Am I manifesting all of this in my body? Like, let's have a look at that, you know. Maybe taking short-term medications to make you relax. I don't know. But yeah, it should be not forced upon us, but given as a option so that we can make an informed decision and be sovereign beings. It's all about free will. And that's the other thing I was going to say, and I've got a lot to say. It's the whole world is based upon marketing, and isn't that a way of manipulating our free will? That is a way of saying you really need that flash new iPhone, don't you?
Yeah, that's those societal pressures, absolutely. And I wanted to move this along. I know we don't have much time in our chat today, to, if it's all right, to how it relates to SCHH, and also these treatments that we have, even if you're going to have a treatment with another spiritual healer, the importance of gaining consent from the client as well to do these things. Before we talk about SCHH and dive into that, it's also related to karma, I think, and karmic relationships and judgment as well, for judging others, judging ourselves and our own actions, and karma as well. I had this interesting conversation with somebody about a year ago who grew up in a Wiccan family. And I had this interesting conversation with this man, and it was really interesting because for me, I live my life with with the belief of not interfering with other people's karma and interfering with others people's free will, so trying not to inflict karma onto other people. And I think that can get into a whole other topic of like witchcraft and all these different things, good versus evil, the dark versus light, which I think is important to talk about because it also is very related to SCHH and the entity attachments that we have in that. And we talk about it being a free will universe when we talk to the entities within SCHH and that sort of thing. So I had this conversation with this guy who was Wiccan, and I asked him, because I found like his way of life was really different to the way that I grew up. And he said that he was explaining to me that in their family, that if someone has done something that they feel is wrong in life or society, that they could put a spell on them, or they thought that it was okay for them to interfere with that person's karma, to create a karmic outcome for that other person. Or if someone had done something, some sort of wrongdoing to them, kind of like an eye for an eye type of scenario. Wow. Where they felt it was okay to then create bad karma for that person, or create the consequence for that person who had done something wrong to them. And it was just so interesting to see this different way of thinking. And what I asked him was, I said, do you feel as though that it is our job, that we have the right to interfere with other people's karma? Do you feel as though that the person will receive their own consequence through karma, through their own actions? Or is it their job to judge themselves in those situations? And he said yes, that he thinks it's fine to interfere with people's karma. And it was just completely opposite to the way that I grew up. But it was just really interesting how there's so much diversity in the world. And I guess there is a place, like, people choose to be, there is a place for everything in this world. How would we experience the opposite of any situation and have any opposites in the world if we didn't have both sides playing? And so, you have good magic, you have, dark magic, light magic, and is it okay to, magic of the light can be something, even praying for someone to get better. Well, that's magic. It's like you're hoping that someone's getting better. You're creating that energy towards that person to heal, or to you praying for someone or whatever, and sending them that good energy. Well, then there's the other, there's psychic attacks, putting spells on people. There's also talking behind people's back. There's the Baha'i religion, where they believe that, if you talk behind someone's back, that's worse than physically hurting someone, because it hurts their soul. And their soul, they believe that people's soul can feel when you're talking badly about someone. And if you are talking poorly, you're sending that bad energy towards that person. It's almost like a spell. It's almost like a psychic attack. And the way that we're sending that energy to people. So I found that really interesting, that different perspective that he had growing up in his family. For me, I try and teach my kids. I feel like I'm constantly telling them that we're not an we're not an eye for an eye type of people. We're not an eye for an eye type of people. If someone does something bad, that doesn't mean you do something bad back. Like, they're going to have their consequences for their actions and their lessons to learn. So I'm constantly telling my kids, like, it's not up to us to punish people. We're not judging them. They with their path in life, they're going to have their own consequences to their own actions. It's not our job to inflict those consequences on to someone else. From a biblical perspective, like, there's a lot of that in the Bible as well. Even in Genesis, it talks about, there's this quote in Genesis about, just read it quickly, about the Garden of Eden. And basically, when they eat the fruit, God says, it says, the man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. I thought that was kind of neat. And it goes on to say, behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. And, there's all these different things about free will in different religions and tribes and things around the world. And, that's related to free will in this good and evil battle. And so I just wanted to, put that out there, get people thinking, like, ask a few questions to our audience too, like, are you inflicting bad karma on people? Are you sending that bad energy to people? What side are you on? There's a place for both dark and evil. I think we need to have this ecosystem of equilibrium happening and whatnot. And there is a place for all different types of point of views to allow us to learn from each other. So I'm going to pass it on to you guys, and you guys can talk about SCHH. And I just wanted to point that little story out to our clients, to people watching, because this is related to the entities that are attaching to people in our hypnosis sessions. They don't have permission to be there. You know what I mean? So what do you guys think? I'll just pass it on to you guys.
Well, that was fascinating. Lots to think about, and I think, yeah, awesome what you covered. What jumped into my mind was I was listening to something the other day, and she was talking about karma and dharma. Are you creating karma or dharma at any given moment? And it really, I haven't learned a lot about dharma before, but I've heard a lot about karma. But it was basically, are you creating something good, morality wise, or just for being service to others, or are you doing something which is going to come back at you? And I think you explained that wonderfully. And the other thing I was going to mention was about the Bible. We don't even know what, they say that some of the books have been tampered with or taken out, and there's so many different interpretations that it's amazing, all these layers that we're learning and different ways of looking at it. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Oh, and I had a story about someone I knew probably 30 years ago, and she was from a different culture and one of the islands, and their family had actually been cursed by someone. And I'd never heard of that before because I grew up in quite a sort of naive family, and she'd ended up with a form of cancer. And she was a young girl, and her belief was that had been inflicted on their family because of a certain ritual that had been performed. And I'd never heard of that before, and I was quite shocked and sort of disbelief. But it's great, but because of what had happened with the cancer that she got, it was such a shock. It was so unexpected that it did make some sense, So I think that it's awesome that with SCHH we can work with free will, and ask these entities to leave
Yeah.
and
Those
utilize that. And because it's the free will of the person that we're working with, that they don't want these entities attached anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The North American Native tribes, there's a lot with that went on with psychic attacks and things like that as well, that made people physically ill as well. So I guess growing up in North America, I was aware of that, the history of the psychic attacks. And in one of my SEHH sessions, I was a Native woman in North America, and one of the things that came up, like was the whole like thing with the dream catchers, and they used pink quartz for their babies to sleep with and their children to protect them from psychic attacks in that particular tribe. So yeah. And what about
There's so
you,
much that we didn't know that we're now learning.
Absolutely.
That we can have so much more responsibility with, in our lives.
In the African cultures, for example, and I don't pretend to know too much about what they believe in or not, but they have a very strong belief in witch doctors and sangomas, they call them. And like I said, I don't know very much, but they definitely believe in all kinds of things and witchcraft and curses and a lot of different things. So, and even thinking about helping people, even if you're not sure of it, that is their belief system. And whether you think it's real or not, I mean, you still need to be open to the idea and the learning about it. So yeah, it's a lot, definitely more complicated than what I know. Well, I guess I need to find out more, right?
Yeah, it's always an opportunity for us to learn. I learned about some of the African tribes and in naturopathy as well through the history of healing and that. So that's nice that you mentioned that. And exactly, that's why when I had this conversation with this man who grew up in this Wiccan family, I wasn't judging him, and I still don't judge anyone for like growing up in a different way to me, because what I wanted to do in that conversation I had with him was just gain understanding from a different perspective. And, it's kind of part of why we're here in this earth, is to gain this knowledge and this experience from one another and learn about all these different things. There's just a whole, lifetimes and lifetimes of stuff for us to learn on this planet. And so that all ties into, I guess, our purpose of being here. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's free will, and then there's the sovereignty that we're learning about. And I've learned such a lot in the last 2.5 years about what it means to be a sovereign being.
Absolutely.
And I feel that if we can understand that we're sovereign, we make, we've got total responsibility for what we say, do, our actions, all the things we've been talking about. And that's sort of like a boundary around us too, isn't it? Or our energetic field. And then we can respect that that's what other people do. But I think we've been so confused because of the way we've been brainwashed and programmed, and the whole marketing and all of that, that I know from the culture that I've grown up in, it's been confusing, and I feel like I'm coming to terms with what does it mean to be sovereign is actually huge. I remember in the beginning I thought, I didn't like that concept so much because it's what has been done to words as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking when you were talking just then, Shannon, about all the words, like what does magic mean,
Yeah.
And it's just an interpretation, but they've all been we all have a different interpretation of a word, which is
absolutely
really interesting.
And of witchcraft in itself too, because I always think about Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I always think about those as examples, because like Harry Potter, you have, you have the dark magic and the light magic at the school. And, is the are we noticing like this pattern of the dark side being the ones that are interfering with people's free will, or are we all doing it? I mean, we all can possibly do it unintentionally as well, and exactly, it's like, what's acceptable and what isn't. And I guess that comes down to our own individual journees and our own discernment and our own beliefs and all that. But even like with government or with society, you've got anarchy, and then you've got the complete opposite of dictatorship. Like, where is the balance of this? And then it also got me thinking about nature and animals, and you have your predator and your prey, and they're not governed by like governments and these things. They're just in nature, and you have predators eating prey, and they're just doing their thing in the forest, and how different we are as humans, and how domesticated we are, and with all these rules and everything. So yeah. So is there anything sort of else that you guys want to talk about before we head off today, or any final messages or anything like that?
I just keep thinking the more we do our inner work and the more we figure things out, the more sovereign we can become.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, I feel like the energetics of the last few weeks have been, well, the whole year, but in astrology it talks about it, but you can see it and sense it, that because all this stuff's come up on the planet, all the darkness is coming to light, that is happening with us as individuals. And totally what Marle said, I've sort of found that I have to do the inner work now. I'm so compelled to do it. And I see that with other people as well. And I see people even wanting to change their diet or wanting to exercise. I know it's the time of the year, well, and now, down here in the Southern Hemisphere, but I just, this whole process is helping people get motivated to do the inner work, because it's just a natural process as we're doing this cleanse and ascension.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think we might leave it at there, ladies. This chat has been awesome, and it's such a big topic. We could have literally talked and talked and talked, I think, about all this. So thank you so much for, getting together again today for this chat. And I love you, ladies, and I look forward to our next chat as well. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.